Welcome to the One Step Ahead series, part storytelling, part podcast, and entirely a celebration. This project is a way to honor the wise beings and medicines that serve us in creating a life that is aligned with the unique beings we are, and the values that connect us to ourselves, to others, to our precious planet, and energies in the universe. You're invited to share in the intimate conversations that arise when we ponder and explore the questions: what does living in alignment feel like? What does it look like? How do we find our way, and who are the guides that can help us discover and deepen our understanding of ourselves? If you're a curious seeker, if you've known that something about your circumstances is not quite the right fit and wondered, what else is there? This is a place to open, expand, and explore. One step ahead of our past, of where we've been, one step closer to where we want to be, where we're meant to be, finding alignment. Always, still, putting one foot in front of the other. Welcome, friends, to, oh my gosh, Eileen and I were so distracted. We were catching up on all of the good things. We always have so much to say when we connect. But we're here together today to record the seasonal energetics of winter. This is our fourth season. This is our fourth seasonal energetics conversation. And it's been so delicious and so good and so easy to keep having these conversations. And I am so grateful, sweet Eileen, for your generosity, as always, in supporting and having these really cool conversations that really help set the tone for the episodes that are going to follow. It's always so juicy.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure, honestly. I love these conversations, and this whole project has been really inspired and beautiful.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much. And for anybody who happens to be finding us for the first time, I am your host, Sheena Wilson, the creator of the One Step Ahead series. I am stepping into the era of introducing myself as I am a creativity guide. I'm
Ooh.
a creativity guide first and foremost in my own life and in my work. This is what I do. And I am so grateful to be joined by Eileen March, who is our in-house witch, our in-house slow living witch. Got to make sure to emphasize that. And really, our in-house expert on all things cyclical and energetics. Yeah. So, wintertime. I was in Arizona last week. I had to fly, land in Seattle, and let me tell you, when I got off the plane in Seattle, it felt like winter time. Like it was full on, and on the West Coast, it can feel kind of long drawn out autumns, really beautiful long drawn out springtime, but then we get these winter days, and I know that Calgary has already had some good dumps of snow, but I also heard that some areas peculiarly that usually have snow are getting rained on right now. So
Oh, yeah. We're all the weather patterns. We did have very much the arrival abruptly. It's always abrupt, no matter what point of the year it comes of winter. A few weeks back, and we got lots and lots of snow over the course of a couple of weeks, and it was cold, and then, as Calgary does, it warmed right up, and now we have ice everywhere and very little snow. And the poor plants, this is just what they deal with in Chinook land. So it's been above zero most days for the last 2 weeks,
mm,
and a bit windy and cool, but it is wintry for sure. I also was traveling on the weekend and connected from my flight home from Vancouver through Fort St. John. For
oh,
any listeners, you ought to look that one up on the map. Why we're going through Fort St. John to get from Vancouver to Calgary is what happens when you buy a plane ticket 2 days before you fly and you need the cheapest route home.
oh,
It was very winter there. I stepped off the plane. It was like it's the tiniest airport I've ever been in, and it was like minus 15 outside in my Vancouver clothes. So very winter, regardless of whether that means rain or snow or not even that, with just noticing how short the days are getting. We are fast approaching winter solstice as we record. And so, no matter what the weather is doing, if you're in the northern hemisphere, you'll notice those days have gotten significantly shorter.
mhm, mhm. It was peculiar actually to be in Arizona because it feels
Mm.
like it's a summer day, but the
Hmm.
sun still sets at 5 o'clock. The
Right.
sun seems to move across the sky so much more quickly, and it's a little bit disorienting for the system. My
Hmm.
system is not used to sunshine and short days at the same time. You don't wear flip-flops and have a, sunset before supper time.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. That was very much my system that when we started recording this series, I was down in Argentina and I'd gone from almost spring to almost autumn, and it was very jarring for my system to be in that space of heat too as it moved towards winter there.
Mm.
It's interesting to notice the way that our bodies are like, but wait, this isn't right, because we have a relationship with the land that we live on. Even if we're not super aware of it, it exists. Our bodies know, even if we don't consciously recognize it.
Mhm. 100% agree. Yeah, there's this energetic softening for me that comes with coming home, regardless of how wonderful the time away has been. And similarly, I visited Sedona for the first time, and I it was just a toe dip, but I was very aware of the energy. It felt almost like a tornado spiral, like just
Mm.
this energy spiraling in my being. And I thought, okay, I did the things. I meditated, I soaked in a tub, and even in all of those settings, I was aware of this swirling energy. And I attributed that a lot to the magic of the land and where I was, and my body
Mhm.
saying, like, I'm really excited to be here, and this feels really different from what I'm used to. Um, which is why we keep having these conversations and why we keep coming back to why you and I and why we're amplifying really the information around cyclical living and what that is, and to learn to work with the energies of our environments, whether we're at home or on the other side of the world. We can have an awareness that enables us just to create a little bit more compassion and curiosity when things feel maybe a little unusual or unsettled or whatever we can't put our
Mhm.
finger on, but we're trying really hard to identify so our rational brain can make it okay. Sometimes it's just the energy. And so, talking about the energy of winter, so excited to
Mhm.
tap into all of those different little pieces as we do when we think about the moon cycle and women's cycle, menstrual cycle. That's the word that I'm looking for. And any nuggets, as always, for how we can really make the most of the energy of this season. And of course, it's, this is
Mhm.
going to be coming out right around the Christmas season. I won't be surprised if people don't actually tune in until January, but there's still a lot of fervor even as these days, and it feels almost rapidly getting shorter, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to
Mhm.
turn it over to you for whatever goodness is coming to mind.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I don't like the cold, but in a lot of ways, winter is becoming one of my seasons that I really look forward to with excitement. I think I look forward to with all of them with excitement, but the piece about winter that was a real big shift for me as I started this work and started deepening into this way of living and moving with the seasons is the immense relief of the dark and the permission to sleep more, to rest more, to be still more. And I was thinking about it actually. A lot of people get seasonal affective disorder. They suffer from that, not getting enough sunlight, feeling sad, etc. And I have no studies about this. It just was an insight that just came to me as I was thinking about what I wanted to say. And I think part of that disorder, as we call it, is a natural response to our society telling us we need to keep working at the same pace as we do in the bright, beautiful, sunny summer months. That there's something wrong with us if all we want to do is sleep an extra 2 hours every night in the winter, that means we're depressed. And it's like, No. That means that we are human, that we're following, we're nature. We're supposed to rest more. We're supposed to feel a bit more sluggish. We're supposed to eat more to put that fat on to survive the cold. We're supposed to go to bed early and wake up late. Like that is part of this season. It's what the animals do. They're a lot less active, even the ones that don't hibernate. They've bulked up through summer and autumn, tried to get themselves really fat so that they can be more still and conserve energy through the long winter months. And when it's dark out, unless you're a nocturnal animal, that's when you're supposed to be resting or sleeping, and we wouldn't naturally have been out and about. And so I think there is, I mean, I very much recognize, especially in parts of the world that get quite gray in the winter, that there is like a real thing about not getting enough sunlight to keep our happy hormones going. And also, I think it's really compounded by this unnatural push to carry on at a summer's frenzied pace all season, all year, every day. Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. I already have been thinking towards fall and winter of next year, and I am going to be very strategic in my business to not be pushing anything. Not be pushing anything. It will get done before, or if it needs to, it will wait. Because the more we push, joy requires a certain amount of energy.
Yes. Yes, it
Right?
does.
It doesn't require a lot of energy to be super low vibration and really unhappy. And that is not where we want to be. So we need to be really mindful of where we're putting our energy. And my body was begging me to slow down. It was begging me for more rest. It was forcing me to sleep later because it was really hard to continue to try and get up earlier. And it actually took me a while. And I've been talking about this stuff all year long, but it took me a while to realize I am trying really hard to keep working with the same fiery summer energy, and that's not what's happening in my environment. And this really feels unnatural. And oh, wait, right. I have my own business so that I can create the schedule that I need to feel aligned. So to hear you articulate that so clearly, the world doesn't change. It doesn't change with the season. And so sometimes it feels so much easier and sometimes it feels so much harder. But if we understand it and can take action, like I don't even know what that would look like, thinking back to my government days, right? If I were to roll up
Mm,
to my supervisor and say, during these months, I need to dial back the amount of projects that I'm assigned because my body naturally needs me to go slower. Like I can just see the look on their face, like I was speaking another language or something. But
uh,
this is a way of saying, yeah, but what if you even just had that conversation, right? Because
yeah.
maybe I could have had, and not to say I could have, would have anything differently, but I love to think that Sheena today would feel confident in having a conversation just to help others even become aware of this.
And give themselves some grace. And,
Hmm.
if it means if you're in a 9 to 5 and you have no control over your schedule like that, maybe it means taking on one fewer extracurricular type, if you're on the parent teacher association, maybe you aren't. Or if you are driving your kids to three different types of lessons in the weekend in school nights, maybe you say, you know what, kids, you can each choose one thing you do.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is just saying, I'm going to go to bed half hour earlier, and whatever it is that you can give yourself a little extra spaciousness, not overbooking yourself with outings. You still need connection, community, all those pieces, just but really being conscious of how you are scheduling the time that you do have that is your own, and doing away with some of that negative judgment self-talk, which is in itself draining when you do need to go to sleep early and maybe you do skip the gym once a week to have an extra 45 minutes of sleep. There is space for both. And if you're in a menstruating body, maybe the day you skip the gym is also the first day of your period when you should really just be sleeping anyway.
Yeah.
Or resting a lot more, and just finding those little ways to carve a bit more rest into your days. And then if you have the luxury of being an entrepreneur, of creating your own pace, or of working for somebody who gives you flexibility, having that conversation with them or with yourself and allowing for more more time for dreaming. This
Yeah.
is known as the dream time in the Celtic world, this long dark of winter.
I love that. I just wrote down the dream time. What I wrote down before that was permission. So those are
Hmm.
the words that are on the page in front of me. And yeah, the darkness really does give us permission because we're so accustomed to you be inside before it gets dark. All of these sorts
Hmm.
of things. And we're not accustomed to, many of us, we're not accustomed to having time for the dreaming. I know
Yeah.
now I'll start daydreaming and right away my brain thinks, oh, that's an idea I need to write down. But grown-ups don't do a lot of that.
No.
Just don't. We don't. It's not what?
Productive.
Yeah. So,
Even though it's exceptionally if we think of productive in the term of like fertility and the things we are creating as products of our imaginations, it is an extremely fertile practice, and yet it's not outwardly active and outwardly producing a tangible thing in the moment that we are doing the dreaming. It's required for those things to be produced down the road, but we tend to deprioritize it. And it is really hard to drop into creativity and to dreaming if you are so exhausted and or stressed. Like stress activates our amygdala, that fight flight response, the fear, and there's no space for creativity. When that is on board, you are in survival mode. We don't care about what color that flower is and if it evokes a notion of, whatever, beauty, peace, something that a poem. It doesn't even factor in. It's hard to even see the flower if we are in that space of like survive, survive, survive.
and then if somebody happens to point it out, then we feel then we shit on ourselves for, well, I don't even see these things. It's like, oh,
Hmm. Hmm.
just that go, 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 go.
It's, yeah.
I'm thinking about meditation practices. This is a bit of a side tangent. We go, 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 and then somebody says, okay, the best way to slow down is still your mind. Go into meditation, be still. So we're like, okay, it's either go, 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 or I'm going to practice trying to turn it off. There isn't a whole lot of landscape and opportunity between those two. The only reason that I talk about dreaming now is because I had no choice but to prioritize doing so, and I had the beautiful opportunity to work with coaches and in community with other incredible humans who were also learning how to dream.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not an easy thing to do. That's a conversation for a different time. But if anybody is listening and saying like, "Oh, really? Nice for you. I'm so glad." That's not my reality. Like I'm surviving. Like you say, their brain is in
Yeah,
survival mode. But there is hope. There is
there
hope. That's
is.
part
There
of why
is.
mental wellness is so important, is because
Yeah.
we can open up to so much more when our nervous system is calm, when it's regulated, when
Hmm.
our bodies are nourished.
And the tools that help us do that, they're not complicated. This is just making me think about one of my clients who came to work with me because she was in that place of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I need, but this can't go on. I can't keep living like this. And it it was just those daily gentle reminders to tune in, gentle reframes to see the magic that was there and to get out. Again, when we're stressed, we get tunnel vision, and that's survival. We need to see what's in front of us in sharp, clear focus so that when we're running from the bear or fighting the bear off, we can see what's happening. But it doesn't allow us to see the bigger picture. It doesn't allow us to see alternative solutions or viewpoints. And when I asked her at the end of working together for 6 months, you know, how many hours a day she felt like she'd created for herself, I was shocked when she said like at least an hour and a half a day. We didn't change anything about she was still a stay-at-home mom of two homeschooled boys who was running her own business and whose partner was away a lot for work and she on a farm. Like this woman is busy. And yet, just with some perspective shifts and priority shifts and changing her internal like story and the things she said to herself about herself, we created all of this time seemingly out of thin air. And it is a lot about that, yeah, embracing that stillness that exists all around if we can tap into it. And this season is the perfect season to practice tapping into it because it's so present.
What are some of the things that you have noticed in your world and in your practice? Some of the ways that you've created a bit more of a seasonal flow for working with winter. Parts of it are really cozy and scrumptious, and parts of it are intimidating and a bit scary and isolating. And I'm just wondering, what have you noticed your body is naturally moving towards as your understanding and working with seasonal energies is evolving?
Hmm. Hmm. I I really delight in getting up in the dark. I don't want to get up early and I don't have to get up in the dark these days. But I really love coming downstairs, especially at this time of year. I have a Christmas tree all lit up in the out of the side of my view here, and turning on those lights and lighting a candle. I don't burn candles so much in the summer because I burn them in the dark, and it's bright until like 11 p.m. here in the summer. And so having that really slow, soft, indulgent morning ritual of lighting a candle and having my coffee and reading a book for pleasure before starting my day. I think the amount of time I spend sitting and reading stretches out a bit in the winter. The amount of time I sleep in stretches out a bit. And I notice myself every year having to remind myself that it's okay to be sleeping more at this time of year. I've slept till 8 the last few mornings, partly due to the weekend I had. And lack of sleep, but also partly because it's dark still. Even at 8, when I get up, the sun is just kind of peeking up over the horizon. And so it is that repeated permission, like even I have to remind myself it's okay to slow down, making a point to step outside during the day. That's a harder one in the winter. And I really find I miss that connection to the earth that I get all spring, summer, fall when I can go outside and put my feet in the grass. And then it gets cold. I'm like, well, I could just stay inside. Like, I don't need to go out there. And on the days that I do, even just stepping outside, putting my hand on a tree trunk and grounding in and getting that winter sun on my face really helps. And taking those moments of daylight and beauty and still maintaining that connection to the earth even as she slumbers is really helpful for getting through. And you kind of touched on this too, remembering that everything will still be here if I pause. It's okay to put things down for a little while. They'll still be there to pick back up when the time is right. And that's the hardest one for me, for sure,
Yeah.
especially in the building the business. If anybody, I mean, I know there are entrepreneurs listening, and so that can be really challenging but kind of planning ahead, as Sheena said, and making sure that during that really productive season of September, like back to school energy, details, focus, that kind of autumn energy we talked about, if you can use some of that to prep yourself for winter, much like you'd be putting in extra hours to get all of the harvest processed and stored and canned and salted and dried and all of the things so that you'd have food all winter. You can kind of treat your business that way too, where your September, October is preparation for the ability to go inwards and rest.
Yeah. And knowing, really, really trusting that going inwards to rest is where we
Magic
cultivate,
happens.
yes, we cultivate the ability for the dreams to arise and for our beings to be still and present enough that we're not wrestling with it to be quiet, but rather we're like, oh, wow, that's a neat idea. And just
Yeah.
playing with them for a little while. Just, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? And it's really sweet to just give ourselves permission to not write it down, to not add it to the to-do list. And I try to practice if something feels really, really juicy and I choose not to get up and write it down, is just a little internal prayer that please help this one come back to me when the time is right. And then,
Mm.
like you say, just
Hmm.
go it and trust that's what is meant for us will be there. And
Yeah.
with the business building, it really is, well, it's counterintuitive in so many ways. And I mean, this goes for folks who are working in a 9 to 5 or within other organizations as well, that the the sense of needing to hustle is always there droning on in the background.
Hmm.
Right? Like,
Hmm.
and I think maybe that's part of why it's even extra important throughout the rest of the year to be cultivating practices and stocking the toolkit to increase our ability to tend to ourselves well during the winter time.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And you may find too that if you do set yourself up to have this space, that an idea comes through that demands to be acted on and that you have the joyful energy to act on it because there aren't a million other things bogging you down. Um, I love that playfulness of like asking it to come back. And my brain's like, no, I'd be having a document that I would jot down all those ideas, not to act on them, but to capture them and see what stays. And an awareness of like, is there one that comes through that makes you want to jump up off your seat and go start doing it right now?
Mhm.
There's permission for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it feels light and fun.
That's the magic, is how does it feel? Because if doing that
Mhm.
feels good, follow it. Follow
How
it.
does it feel? How does it feel? Yes, it comes back to that. Everything comes back to that.
Mhm.
Everything that we're working for and towards, it's a desired feeling state when we get right down to it.
And there are a lot of conditions in our world that are going to, sweep us back and forth as we're on our way, where
Hmm.
we're going to ride those emotional waves. And there are a lot of areas of our lives where we actually have more choice than we might realize, more power over our conditions if we actually get really clear on what our priorities are, and and in some cases make some courageous decisions around what we're asking to wait for us while we're taking
Yeah.
care of these other things.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think there is that kind of comes back to that push pull inside of us with this like culture of hustle that tells us never to wait.
Yeah.
Do, act, go now, more, forward, upward. And the wisdom of this season of rest and of dreaming is that practicing patience too, and practicing allowing space and breathing room before acting. And yeah, tending those, doing the things that recharge you in addition to the restfulness. That's something I've been kind of mulling recently, is the difference between resting and recharging and how we need both. If you've been going and you've burnt yourself right out and are depleted, you can sleep all you want. That will refuel your physical cells, but to recharge your energy levels, you also need to do activities that fill you up. Getting together with friends, maybe, or dancing, or poetry, or painting, or something creative, usually, that can give you that recharge that you also need.
So true. My biggest wish for having these conversations, I think, is because I appreciate that I speak from what would seem to be to many people an extremely privileged perspective as an entrepreneur, as someone who prioritizes making time for rest. And
Mhm.
I I know that I'm privileged because I spent a lifetime of being in the real world.
Mhm.
And so I really am hoping that us having these conversations, other people listening to these conversations, that part of the ripples are sparking courageous conversations for other people in their realms where they genuinely, if it's anything like what I'm accustomed to, feel absolutely powerless. Even,
Mhm.
I heard a story recently of a really incredible human who does such good work for her organization. She wanted one unpaid day off to do something really important.
Oh.
And after years of service, she was basically threatened with being fired if she were ever to ask again.
Mhm.
Like these are not, those aren't good human living conditions, right? Like no, we all
No.
deserve so much more respect for what is important to us and what our needs are. And so for those folks who are listening, who are rolling their eyes because yeah, it must be nice to talk from this perspective. I'm here to tell you that part of the reason I am here is because I started having those conversations before I left government. I started
Mhm.
pushing back. I started telling them, I really want to do good work for you, and I need I need more time and space in order to do that.
Mhm.
Granted, I'm not there now, but
Mhm.
that was my choice and not theirs. But the conversations, when I would have them, it seemed like I was saying something that was brand new to them, that they really
Yeah.
hadn't thought of how much my mental well-being or lack thereof contributed to the quality of the work that I was doing. And as we found ways of working together better, they got better results from me too.
Mhm.
And I like to think that maybe it opened up a little bit of deeper understanding for them that even the people who seem like they're rock stars and that they can handle it and do all of the things, that a lot of them are doing too much for someone else and not enough for themselves. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think that there's a tide shift slowly happening, even in the world of business. I'm seeing more businesses hiring on coaches for their employees and having a more of an awareness around that balance. And I think there's so far to go still. There's like, it's almost like in a lot of cases, lip service.
Yeah.
Like here, we know these things are important, but kind of do it on your own time. We'll give you a seminar, but do it on your own time. And you still need to be at your desk with your butt in your chair from 9 to 5 every day, and just these conditions that, yeah, it's really hard for those organizations to change.
Mhm.
And often it is a bottom up shift then that is more effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. I want to make sure we touch on the moon cycle, the lunar cycle, and also the topic of compost.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
because not only is it the season of dreaming, but it's a season of composting. And as we were speaking, I had this visual of, autumn is when we we cut back the plants. We let those leaves fall, the leaves naturally fall off a lot of trees. We cut back the stalks in our garden. We plant those seeds that overwinter and are going to come out in the spring, like spinach and bulbs and things like that. And that layer of leaf, the things that no longer are needed by the plants for the next year, get compost and decompose and with the help of lots of little microorganisms, turn into next year's nutrients. And so I had this image of something that you might want to do as you listen, after you listen to this episode, is think back to what it is that you recognize was no longer serving you back at autumn, if you did that practice with us. And if you didn't, sitting with that now, it's the end of the year. The Gregorian calendar is not my fave, and it carries some energy and weight because our whole society is built around it. So it's a great time of year to be reflecting back, to be thinking about what isn't serving. And then in your dream space, can you almost visualize those things that you are choosing to let go of, to step away from, behaviors, beliefs, projects, whatever it might be? Can you imagine them like the leaves breaking down and turning into all the micronutrients that next year's projects, beliefs, behaviors are going to need to grow? The basic building blocks are the same, but they need to be rearranged. And that's what this dream time gets to do for us, is rearrange the building blocks.
You and I have talked about composting a number of times. Today it lands so differently. I've had an easy time thinking of it, okay, let it fall away. It's not serving me. And then leaving that there, and I'm still moving this direction. And it's only just now, in the way that you described that I can feel a, almost a sense of reclaiming that energy. I didn't realize there was energy there for me to reclaim. I just thought it was something that I had to let go of. And so that to me, just that feels like the magic. The magic is there is reward in the letting go of the things
Mm-hmm.
that don't serve. The more that I can sit in the reward of that, and the, ooh, what am I going to do with the energy and the time and all of that rich, rich, new, fertile soil? What am I going to do with that instead? That feels really delicious in my body. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. Compost is the best.
It
It's my
is.
favorite. It's dark and it's earthy and it's moist and it's
And
generative, and yeah,
so full of nutrients.
so full of
Nutrients.
nutrients. Yes. Yeah. And it gives us permission to, it makes it easier to really appreciate the value and recognize the positive, even of things that are perhaps really toxic that we're letting go. Things that, maybe it's a belief that we adopted when we were really little as a protection mechanism. And it's like, we need to get rid of that so that we can be our whole, full, beautiful, shining selves. But if we get rid of it as a like, oh, that's bad and awful and ick, it's actually harder to release it than if we can say, thank you so much for what you did for me, protecting me my whole life. And thank you for the nutrients and the understandings I've gained from you to allow me to move forward and move on, instead of cutting off that part of ourselves, alchemizing it. Yeah.
Alchemy is, I think, a personal power that many of us are learning about, that we're starting to wake up to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we're starting to get near the end of our time. We haven't talked about moon cycles yet, but I feel like this is a moment to just expand on the alchemy a little bit. This is like my symbol for what can be done with transmuting energy, and
Mm.
a physical representation of what is actually possible when I work with the energy that's within and around me. So some people might see this and be like, oh, I know what that is. I know what that is. And I bent this spoon with my bare hands on the weekend.
Mm.
And I tried really freaking hard, and I actually ended up physically damaging myself a little bit. I still have a little scar there, but I had no idea that this was even possible, that I
Mhm.
could take a straight spoon and not only bend it in half, but give it a beautiful little twist. I just wanted a twist. I wanted to see a twist in there. And we can do this every day, all day. Like honestly, with all of the energy that is around and within us. But we are so busy doing that we don't realize that there is really this power of alchemizing what's within and
Mhm.
around us in order to net the results that we desire, to create
Mhm.
more of what feels good for us. There's a little tangent there, but thanks for letting me celebrate my spoon.
It's beautiful.
I love it.
You know what it makes me think of is in The Matrix when that little kid is bending the spoons with his mind and putting them all down in different shapes.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be rewatching The Matrix, I think, with a whole different perspective than my
Mm.
30-year-old self did. I'm quite keen
Mm.
to try that.
Yeah, it's a good one. I just recently watched it. Mhm.
Mhm. Okay,
Okay,
back to
let me
regularly
touch
scheduled
briefly. Yeah.
programming.
That's all good. This piece doesn't have to take long because at this point we've talked through the moon and the lunar cycles. And when I say moon cycle and lunar cycle, I need to get better at being consistent with my languaging, but I like to use lunar cycle for the moon above. And that way I can start to use the word moon cycle for the menstrual cycle. That's kind of a reclamation from the really clinical, medical, patriarchal system that named it the menstrual cycle. And in some ways it's, menstruation, it's bleeding. That makes sense, but it's very sterile. And so reclaiming kind of that connection with the moon, the lunar cycle and the moon cycle, our own internal moon cycles, is a really kind of stepping back into connection with the divine feminine energy of it all and that cyclical nature of it all. Right in the as soon as you say moon cycle, you get that idea of waxing and waning and that energetic shift. So I do use them a bit interchangeably. I'm trying to not, but when we enter winter, which also is like the beginning of the Celtic year, just like the beginning of the Celtic day starts at dusk. We are entering that most important, fertile, creative dream space, rest. This is akin to the new moon when we're looking at the moon, the lunar cycle, that seed planting time, that dark dreaming time. There's no light in the sky at night. It's easier to sleep for many, and it's a good time for new beginnings. And in our own bodies, if we are in menstruating bodies, then that bleeding time, the moon time, if you will, the first few days of menstruation are the same energies as winter. And this was one of the most powerful things that I really started to notice when I tuned in. The lunar cycle affects me a little bit less. I do notice sleep disruptions a bit often around the full moon, but it's a lot less potent. I'm not a lunar witch. I'm a green witch. I'm like very earth-based, which obviously the moon has a lot of effect on our bodies and the earth because of the tides and the gravity. But for me, my own moon cycle, my internal rhythm, and the shifts that happen throughout are so fascinating because I was so unaware of them for so long. But really being able to honor that first day, especially, but kind of for me, 36 hours of when I'm bleeding is really low energy. I have no focus, like I'm fuzzy, and yet I often am quite creative. And so there is that creativity in the dreaming, in that restful, dark void that is winter and new moon and bleeding time. And so that's that same energy mirror there. And much like in the winter, if you can allow yourself a little more rest, go to bed a bit earlier, get up a bit earlier, activities that are lower effort and energy. And the same goes for our own inner body. And if you're following the cycle of the moon and not in a body that is experiencing a moon cycle still or ever, or you know all the variations that there is, then giving that permission around the new moon to just take a little more rest, to be a bit more easeful. Maybe your activity or your exercise is yin yoga instead of, Ashtanga around that time or whatever it might be. And permission to be a bit less social too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That less social. It's such a funny thing again with, counterintuitive to the energies and the big holiday energy and push and all of that beautiful connection that happens for so many people. And then January, it's just like crickets.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, we often overdo it.
We do. We do. Yeah. I'm this year actually I'm very much looking forward to a quiet, creative January.
Mm.
My priorities are going to be on rest and dreaming because I know that we're very fortunate out here because we start getting like cherry blossom buds in mid to late
Mm.
February. And as soon
Yeah.
as those start to come out, my energy just like
Ooh,
starts to go
yeah.
up. And had I not had the autumn that I've had, I think that my January may have not been planned out as thoughtfully. I think that I would have been maybe trying to push too much. And I think that those voices are still going to come up, but my higher self has a plan. She has a plan.
Mm.
She knows what our
Hmm.
priorities are. So I'm going to try to be really mindful and honor her recommendations. Any advice for people who, I realize many people will be seeing this after the holiday season, so not so much help for support getting through the holiday season, but really help for, not help so much as any advice for tending to our sweet selves who may be feeling particularly depleted or isolated or, sad and all of the emotions that that might be as we're moving through January, February, through those really dark, colder periods of time while we're eagerly looking forward to spring again.
I think coming back into honoring what your body is asking for, especially if there's some loneliness or grief there, making sure that you don't withdraw from everyone,
Mm.
having, somebody to reach out to that you can make a connection with so that you do have a few plans. It might feel really good to have very few, but having a few to make those little bright points of connection, we need community, or maybe it's an online community that you're connecting with. And I think it comes back to that patience and that knowing, returning to that remembering that this too shall pass. Nothing stays the same. It won't be winter forever, much as it may feel like it. Especially here in Calgary, where we are liable to get snow right up through April, May sometimes.
Oh.
Not so much in recent years, but March for sure is a snowy month for us. And yeah, that continued permission to keep dreaming, keep resting if you need more of it,
Mm.
and also to get outside daily,
Mhm.
even if it's for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's just so that you could go out and come back in and actually genuinely be able to comment on how cold it is because it's cold
Right?
out there.
And then, especially in those places where it is quite gray over winter, if you are able, if you see the sun peek out and you are able to pop outside, then do it. Let that sun beat upon your face. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how warm one can feel on a really cold day when you're smiling at the sunshine with your eyes closed. Okay, maybe not smiling, that might just be me, but the sun shining on one's face, even when the body is cold, it just feels so warm and
There's a
juicy.
word for it.
Is there?
There's a word for the feeling of the sun on your skin in winter. And it is I have two favorite words. The other one is petrichor, which is the smell of that is released from dry earth after a rain.
Hmm.
And the feeling of the sun on your face in winter is apricity.
The apricity. Thank you for gifting us that word.
You're welcome.
I love that. That feels
Mhm.
like something to make a grand poem around over these months.
Right? Yeah. It's such a tangible feeling.
Mhm.
If and unless you've never lived anywhere cold, in which case I suspect it would be a bit tricky to imagine. But it is, especially in very cold climates, that feeling of the sun, even in minus 30, is incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Mhm.
Friend, please ponder if there's any other little bits that you might like to share. I wanted to ask, do you have some guided meditations in Insight Timer that you think might be especially supportive through the darker months? And if the answer is
Mm.
yes, I think maybe I do, would you please kindly direct me towards those and I'll share them in the show notes. So anybody who's listening and going, well, okay, but where can I start? Well, maybe we can give them just a little something that helps them settle, rest, maybe
Mhm.
do a little daydreaming.
Yeah, I'm sure that I have several of them that yeah, most of them would likely be appropriate to helping with that. Even just the rest miss welcome email, despite it being
Oh,
tied to rest miss, that first opening meditation is on Insight Timer. I've got a word of the year visualization for anybody who hasn't dropped into connecting with potentially setting that kind of intention for the year. I've got a few others. I'll go peek and send you
awesome.
the link.
Yeah, that would be so good. I love for anybody who doesn't know Insight Timer, it's such a beautiful platform because all meditators can use it and we can choose to financially support the meditation creators.
Mm.
And services like that just make my heart melt because they feel like they're really genuinely here for all of us. And so I thank you for sharing your meditations on Insight Timer, and I'll definitely include a link in the show notes so people can make their way over there.
Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really beautiful platform. I really like being able to share there. And all of my tracks at this point are free tracks. So you don't need to be a paid subscriber to access any of them. There's an option for donation after the track ends. I have had one random man from the United States give me $3. I was like, oh, thank you. Abundance.
Nice.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for that invitation. And yeah, in terms of any final musings, offerings, I think I'm just a little bit bittersweet that this is the end of our season together. It's been so lovely to connect and to talk about the shifting energies and traverse the year with you. And I'm excited to keep dropping into the energies with you next year through Wheel of the Year ceremony. And
I know. Thank you for
yeah.
mentioning that because I am so excited to have that in my plans. I've been working on my 25 things to do for 2025. And
Mm.
right near the top of my list actually is to, I'm not sure of the right word. It's like attend, participate, celebrate, all of those things, all 8 Wheel of the Year ceremonies with you next year. And a
Mm.
big part of my excitement for signing up in advance. For folks who don't know, there's this beautiful new package out where we can actually sign up for all 8 ceremonies and just know that that's our plan. But I really love that we've got the 8 different seasonal touch points with every season of OSA, we've had a little bit of conversation. We didn't talk about that actually. We didn't talk about the Wheel of the Year ceremonies. I know that Yule will be past by the time our episode comes out or right around the same time, but there will be, oh, beautiful ceremony again in February too for winter.
Mhm.
Maybe we better just
Mhm.
mention this a little bit before we wind. So
Sure.
please remind me about the ceremonies
Yeah.
that we're looking forward to in the winter and moving into spring next year.
Yeah, so Imbolc is the first, and the actual, I mean, the day of Imbolc is traditionally the February 1st, but because the Celtic calendar begins at dusk, and because January 31st is a Friday, that is when we will be gathering to celebrate. I hold all of the ceremonies on Friday evenings because it seems to work the best for the most folks and for me. And so we have Imbolc, which is the season of spring in the Celtic calendar, again in Ireland, they'll be having things like cherry blossoms. I don't know if they have cherry blossoms there, but they have flowers poking up come mid-February, so it feels a bit spring-like there. Carmen Spagnola calls it winter spring, which I love. I think she lives out on the island, and so, or she did. So capturing kind of that essence of like it's still chilly, but the days are longer, and there's like this promise of spring in the air. And then the following one is Ostera, which is happening on March 21st, which is the spring equinox. So mid-spring or the beginning of spring in our calendar. And all of the dates and times, all the way through, all 8 are up on my website under Wheel of the Year ceremonies.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, so good. So good. Thank you for creating that offer. Thank you for sharing the opportunity to participate in the ceremonies. I love how it just works out so beautifully because I attend virtually. You are in Calgary.
Mhm.
One day we'll
Mhm.
attend together, but I really genuinely have felt like I am part of the circle in your living room. You facilitate the blended group just so skillfully. So for anybody who's wondering if you're in Calgary, definitely find your way to any of Eileen's in-person offers. But if you're not, if you're anywhere else, please trust that the online participation, it's so enrich. It's still so good. It's still so
Mhm.
good. So yeah, thank you for both of those pathways in there as well. Mhm.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Yeah, so folks, find more of Eileen as always on the Woo Curious podcast, and your content on social is also wonderful. And so I highly recommend check her out on Instagram and TikTok. And I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that there might be little bits of OSA popping up in 2025, like maybe a reunion around, the
Mhm.
turning of the season, something like that. We're leaving things open to see what daydreams come
Comes
up.
through. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I love that. It
Yeah.
is the end of a chapter,
Hmm.
not the end of the book.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like a book, but like a book of like the best ongoing series where it
Right.
never stops. Just the mentored author, it just keeps going and going. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Sabrina and I'll talk about this a little bit more in our season opener, but the guests that we've invited for the winter season really are intended to mm, give us lots of tools for those darker months so that we can
Mhm.
take care of our sweet selves with as much compassion and patience as possible.
Good.
And a sense of
Yes.
humor, if we can have that too, then
Goes a
my
long
ship
way.
is sailing.
It goes a long, long way.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
thank you
lovely.
again, sweet friend. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.